At Team Toyota, they've been selling and servicing new and used Toyotas in your community for over 50 years. And you can reserve your next new Toyota with them today. You'll get a realistic timeline, and even in this crazy market, they won't charge you over MSRP. Or don't wait at all. With over 75 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. And you can always trust them to maintain your current vehicle. Their service and collision centers are high-tech, comfortable, and will save you time and money. Team Toyota can help you go anywhere you want, but they'll always be your hometown team. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton. Five homers one night, no hits the next. These Phillies are truly capable of anything. This is the Phillies Talk podcast. I'm Corey Seidman. He's Jim Salisbury. And Jim, the World Series is knotted at 2-2 after the Phillies fell 5-0 in Game 4. Couldn't touch Christian Javier or 3 Astros relievers that followed him. It was a particularly futile effort from the middle of the Phillies order. And Aaron Nola and Jose Alvarado combining to give up those runs in the middle of the game now puts the Phillies back in a precarious spot in this World Series, Jim. It's tied. The Astros have home field advantage again. The series is guaranteed of returning to Houston. And Houston also looks like it's going to have the starting pitching advantage the next 2 games. So not exactly the spot the Phillies wanted to find themselves in about 36 hours after that offensive barrage in Game 3.
No, and a complete change of mood and atmosphere down there at Citizens Bank Park. Just crackling with electricity in Game 3, and then a big thud in Game 4. Most of the post-mortems in the clubhouse were, it's just one loss. And they're right. It is. You got to, it's like, when sometimes you win ugly and style points don't matter, it's like a win is a win. I think you can kind of have that same view on a loss, even if the style points are particularly ugly. You get no hit and you strike out 14 times. It's still just one loss. You have to recover from it quickly. You have to put it behind you. I think in some ways it's easier to dismiss than maybe a gut-wrenching 3-2 loss where you lose on a walk-off, you lose late. You just kind of chalk it up to a miserable day, and the term they use a lot is flush it. It's easy to flush something ugly. It's probably more difficult to overcome that 3-2 gut-wrenching loss. So I think you dismiss it, you move on. It's well known they were no hit in a combined no hitter by the Mets on April 29th, and they won the next day on home runs, a couple late home runs by Schwarber and Rhys Hoskins, and those guys are more than capable of doing dramatic things. Just the 3rd no hitter in postseason history. And we've seen 2 of them here at Citizens Bank Park with Halladay in 2010 and now this one with the combined no hitter. And then you had the Don Larson perfect game in 1956, Game 5 of the 1956 World Series. And I was just looking up the next day's box score just before we logged on, Don Larson no hit the Brooklyn Dodgers. Perfect gamed them. And the next day, the Dodgers came back to win 1-0 on a walk-off hit at Ebbets Field by Jackie Robinson. Brooklyn won that game 1-0. I mean, what an epic game it must have been. Went 10 innings. And both starting pitchers, one of them went 9 2/3, the other went 10.
So do you think that's happening tonight?
No freaking way. I mean, the guys get taken on the 5th inning now, but I was having so much fun reading this box score. So Bob Turley goes 9 2/3 for the Yankees, and Clem Labine goes 10 shutout for the Dodgers. And that was a name from my youth, Clem Labine. Not that I ever saw him pitch, but he was from the same area in Rhode Island that I grew up in. And I can remember being in the car with my dad, probably in the 70s, and as a little kid, and him we would drive by Clem Levine's house, and my father would always say, "That's where Clem Levine lives." He was one of the boys of summer, and so I've just had some fun looking at that box score. Sorry for the personal deviation.
Yeah, well, I don't know if the pitchers tonight are going to be going as deep into the game. It's Noah Syndergaard for the Phillies, Justin Verlander for the Astros. So it's going to be another difficult game for the Phillies, even though they hit Justin Verlander in game one. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But I want to start with Christian Javier because this is a guy the Phillies had seen none of. He had never faced the Phils before. The only two players who had seen him prior were Brandon Marsh and Kyle Schwarber. But man, did he just shut them down last night. It wasn't even like the Astros got lucky that the Phillies lined out a bunch. The Phillies only put 3 balls in play all night that had an expected batting average of over 230. So it was a lot of weak contact. Javier, they couldn't seem to pick up his fastball. I mean, just watching from the press box, it's 93, 94, but it looked more like 96, 97. And I saw Bryce Harper said that after the game, that because of the spin, that it just jumps on you. A lot of swings and misses from the Phillies, a lot of flailing at his slider as well. And, based on what we saw from Lance McCullers in game 3 and then Javier in game 4, if this gets to a game 7, the Astros could go with Javier on a day short of rest. I would think that they would be leaning that way over McCullers based on, how these last 2 games have gone.
Yeah, and if it gets to a game 7, it's an all hands on deck situation. I mean, the pitching coach and the manager are, that day in the clubhouse. They're canvassing the clubhouse, and even before that, the day before, what do you got left? How much you got in you? I mean, you could see a merry-go-round of pitchers. You're just trying to get, it's a race to 27 outs if it gets to game 7. I mean, so yeah, you could see him again. I mean, that fastball, that Bryce Harper quote was really good about, it's 93, but it looks 97 because of the high spin rate, and it kind of holds its plane up in the zone. And I mean, that's sort of textbook modern data analytic driven pitching. You ride the spin rate up in the zone above the bat head, because the modern swing is for a lot of guys is more has more of an upward path. So get that high spin fastball above the bat head, and that's what he did. He had that great carry through the zone. Yeah, I was really impressed with him. I had really never seen him pitch. And he's on a really great run here late in the season. So, I got to think if it gets to a game 7, they would try to get him back on the mound for some length of time. Aaron Nola came out. We were remarking early in the game what good stuff he had. He had really, he was up with everything early, and then a couple little hits in the 5th inning, and it mushroomed. And we talked about it on the pregame show. We thought they'd go to Alvarado in the middle innings for Yordan Alvarez, and indeed they did that. Bases loaded, hits Alvarez. Alvarado hits Alvarez, and the game kind of gets away from you there. And it was just a bad night. Easy enough to get rid of, and jump back on the horse tonight and see what you can do. See if you can bounce back from a no-hitter like you did in New York on April 29th. They're part of history, but I mean, Schwarber's right. Who cares? Who gives a bleep? It's just one defeat, and this is a team that has faced adversity all season long in the form of injuries, a managerial change, a slow start, struggling September, where frankly the town really doubted them, and they've answered back on adversity often and frequently, and that's how they've gotten to game 5 of the World Series. So this is another chance to do that.
Speaking of teams that are just crushing it right now, how about Team Toyota in Langhorne, Princeton, and Glen Mills? New Toyota inventory is finally starting to come back, and yet they're still not charging over MSRP. And with over 200 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. Plus, their service centers and body shops will keep your vehicle safe all season long. You're always the MVP at Team Toyota. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Princeton, or Glen Mills. Well, it's, the Phillies, in a way, are fortunate that the series is 2-2 because their 1-2 punch of Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler that had led them to this point has not worked out in the World Series. Those two guys have combined for 12 and a third innings. They've allowed 12 earned runs. Nola lasting just 4 and a third innings in game 1, 4 innings last night. The Astros seemed to start getting to him in the third inning. They were making some solid contact. Yordan Alvarez lined out. And then obviously, in that fifth inning, that's when things unraveled with Jose Alvarado coming in and hitting Alvarez with the bases loaded. Alvarado, that was the first batter he's hit since May. He had been so good. He hit a lot of guys last year, but the command has been much better since he returned from the minors. He hits Alvarez, or he hits Yordan Alvarez. Alex Bregman comes through with a 2-strike hit.
Yeah.
So the fact that the Phillies' two best starting pitchers and Alvarado, who had been so money for them, in the prior rounds, they've gotten hit. They're probably fortunate that this series is tied and they're not trailing.
Yeah, and they have not trailed in the postseason yet. And that was their first loss at home. Loss in Game 5, and they're trailing, and it's a whole new dynamic. So there's a lot of pressure on that pitching staff tonight. There's a lot of pressure on the offense to get runs. I mean, it's you mentioned the combination of Nola and Wheeler and not pitching up to par. I was thinking about that last night. I've been thinking about that a lot. The big reason I think everybody thought the Phillies had a chance to make some noise in the postseason if they could get in is those two guys. They start off, two quality starters at the top of your rotation that, if they have their A game that night, can beat anybody, can beat any bat rack. And, we've seen what Wheeler's done here in the postseason early on. We've seen what Nola did in the postseason early on, but red flags surrounding both. I don't know that we'll see Nola again. I mean, if it's a Game 7, all hands on deck situation, you might see him briefly. I don't know. Zach Wheeler is going to pitch Saturday night. Who knows what they're going to get? Both pitchers have logged huge amounts of innings here. Wheeler led the majors in innings in 2021 last year. Has had little bits of arm trouble here in 2022, and appears to be having more. They're calling it fatigue, but that can often be code for other things. So something is clearly barking on him. He's going to try to pitch through it. Nola, who leads the majors in innings since 2018, frankly just appears to be out of gas. I mean, there was that short spurt early last night, but kind of leveled off after that. That would indicate he's out of gas. So the two big reasons to feel great about the Phillies are just sort of not delivering at this moment. Meanwhile, Ranger Suarez he would line up to pitch Game 7 if you can get there. But, with Syndergaard, basically a bullpen game here in Game 5, and then Wheeler tomorrow night, a lot of question marks. We felt a momentum shift in the series. I think the best thing the Phillies have going for them, the best things the Phillies could have going for them are short memory, good character in that clubhouse led by Schwarber and Harper and Hoskins and the home crowd. The home crowd, I mean, they kind of shuffled out of there last night quietly. I mean, imagine having a ticket for Game 3 and seeing 5 bombs, and that place was electric, and then having a ticket for Game 4 and depleting your bank account to get there and seeing your team no hit, and the ballpark go lifeless. I mean, what a visit to both ends of the spectrum. But the Phillies are still home for Game 5, and that is still a remarkable home field advantage. They gotta get something going early against Justin Verlander, who has his own personal agenda. He's struggled mightily in World Series games. He's going to the Hall of Fame, but that is the kind of the glaring blemish on that Hall of Fame resume. Like 0-6 with a 6 ERA in 8 World Series starts. So he's pitching for his next line on his Hall of Fame plaque, and he's pitching to kind of get that burden off his back. So a lot of little subplots here. I mean, you got Noah Syndergaard, who is pitching because they just don't have a dependable fourth starter. It's amazing that the Phillies have gotten this far without a dependable fourth starter. They've mixed and matched and plugged that spot, and we'll see if Noah Syndergaard can plug it. I think he's pitched like 1 inning or 1 2/3 innings over the last 16 or 17 days. We'll see how sharp he is. There's a lot of pressure in this start. I would expect 2, 3 innings, and then becomes kind of a bullpen relay race again, for a bullpen that had to pick up some innings last night. So big game 5 tonight, last game of the year at Citizens Bank Park. It should be rocking, and again, we face another swing game in this series.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how the bats come out against Justin Verlander, because Verlander did set down the first 9 Phillies he faced in game 1. It's easy to forget that he was dominant early in that game before things went south very quickly for him in the 4th and 5th innings. If he was pitching tonight in a must-win game for the Astros where they were down 3-1 with all that World Series failure narrative surrounding him, I think it would be tremendous pressure. But I could also see him coming out and just feeding off of what Christian Javier did last night and pumping the Phillies with high fastballs just above the zone and missing bats. So they have their work cut out for them. I mean, he struggled in the World Series, but he's also made 3 really good starts in the World Series. He's just had some other ones that have kind of skewed the numbers. But it's, on Twitter, you search his name and Phillies fans are treating him like he's a number 5 starter. This guy is still a former MVP, a soon-to-be 3-time Cy Young winner, and a future Hall of Famer. The Astros still have a massive pitching advantage tonight.
Well, bleep Twitter.
My motto.
Yeah. That's one of the things I thought about last night as they were having trouble with Javier's high fastball is Verlander's made his name on pumping high fastballs by people, high spin rate above at the letters. So we'll see how he reacts there. It's they had a little more success against him in the middle innings when they came back in game 1. Phillies were down 5 runs and they came, they ended up tying it up on that JT Realmuto double, and they won it later in the game against the bullpen. But they mounted a comeback, a game-changing comeback against Verlander in game 1. So I think that can fuel their confidence. And the big thing that happened in the middle innings of that game, I don't have my score sheet, and this whole thing is a blur, but they got some base runners and they got him out of the stretch, and that he was kind of a little bit of a different pitcher out of the stretch. So that might be that's always the blueprint for beating the guy. Get some base runners, right? And things change when you get base runners. So grind the at bats and try to get some base runners early and some action on the bases any way you can, and that might allow you to get to Justin Verlander.
Yeah, because the Phillies don't want to find themselves in a spot where they're down 3-2 in this series, heading back to Houston for Game 6 in that ballpark against Framber Valdez, who, whether he was using anything or not, was nasty in Game 2. Just based on the fastballs they saw from Javier, the breaking balls they've seen from Valdez, they have a ton to think about in this series against the Astros. And going down to Game 6 in a must-win environment against Valdez, especially with the uncertainty looming over Zach Wheeler. It just, highlights the precarious spot the Phillies are in this series right now.
Yeah, it's a swing game. And look, Zach Wheeler's been here 3 years. And, every time he pitches, I think you feel good that he's got a real chance to deliver. The guy's a warrior, but something's not right. Something's not right. And it gives you a little trepidation thinking about how things could go, but maybe he benefits from 2 extra days rest. Maybe he benefits from that and can muster up something. We'll see. He's certainly a great competitor. I wouldn't put it past him, but in the short term, you got to navigate tonight's game. You got to navigate tonight's game with Noah Syndergaard, a guy who did a nice job, a really good job in the clincher against the Braves with that quick 9-out outing before the bullpen took over. What a day that was! 15 strikeouts by the staff, no walks on a game when they used 6 pitchers. But can they do it again? He's not sharp. He was hit hard late in the season. To the point where he really didn't hold on to that 5th job, if you remember. They sort of replaced him with Bailey Falter. So, hey, Thompson Magic has patched this thing together for weeks. We'll see if it can continue. here as this thing now is a best of 3 series.
Yeah, the Phillies have gotten punched in the face more than a dozen times this year, and they've responded almost every time. We'll see if they have one more response in them, and if they can give this Citizens Bank Park crowd, one final time to cheer in the last home game of 2022. Thanks a lot for listening to the Phillies Talk podcast. Game 5 tonight. We'll catch you tomorrow.